Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. This is Left Bank Books welcomes St. Louis native and award-winning author R.J. Hoffmann, who will discuss his new novel, Other People's Children. Hoffmann will be in conversation with the host of the Reading with Robin show, Robin Kall. Left Bank Books is St. Louis's oldest independent bookstore. We would like to thank all of our supporters, the supporters of RJ and Robin, and everyone for their outpouring of love for our bookstore. We offer curbside pickup and delivery to anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. We are happy to be able to bring our event series virtual. We believe that events are a way to expand your mind and bring in new thoughts to make the world a better place. We hope that you enjoyed this event, and we hope that you support Left Bank Books by purchasing a signed copy for you or for all of your friends at left-bank.com. Purchasing a signed copy of the book from Left Bank Books allows us to keep our bookstore and staff operating, and it allows us to keep this event series going. So thank you for your support. And I do have extra special good news. We did announce today that we will be reopening to the public on Independent Bookstore Day. So mark your calendars, April 24th, you will be able to come back inside the doors of Left Bank Books. I am Shane Mullen. I am the events coordinator for Left Bank Books. I help produce our hundreds of author events each year with a fantastic team here in St. Louis. So we will be taking questions from you, the audience, at the end of the event. You can type your questions as a comment at any point in time throughout the event, and we will get to those at the end. And be sure to follow Left Bank Books on Facebook to be notified about all of our fantastic virtual events. We have an incredible lineup for April, and we are adding events to the rest of the year almost daily. So be sure to sign up and find out about what we have in store. About tonight's book, Other People's Children. A riveting debut novel about a couple whose dream of adopting a baby is shattered when the teenage mother reclaims her child. What makes a family? Gail and John Durbin moved to the Chicago suburbs to set up house as soon as Gail got pregnant, but then she miscarried once, twice, 3 times. Determined to expand their family, the Durbins turn to adoption. When several adoptions fall through, Gail's desire for a child overwhelms her. Carly is a pregnant teenager from a blue-collar town nearby with dreams of going to college and getting out of her mother's home. When she makes the gut-wrenching decision to give up her baby for adoption, she chooses the Durbins, but Carly's mother, Marla, has other plans for her grandbaby. In Other People's Children, 3 mothers make excruciating choices to protect their families and their dreams, choices that put them at decided odds against one another. You will root for each one of them and wonder just how far you'd go in the same situation. This riveting debut is a thoughtful exploration of love and family and a heart-pounding page-turner you'll find impossible to put down. Laura Dave, the best-selling author of Last Thing He Told Me, says, Other People's Children is an engrossing debut about the different ways we find our way to parenthood and to the people we are meant to be. I loved these characters and was on the edge of my seat until the last page, hoping they'd find their happy endings. And Kara Wall, the best-selling author of The Dearly Beloved, a Read with Jenna book club selection, says, Other People's Children is a heartbreakingly dark, suspenseful exploration of the boundaries 2 women push to have a child. What I found most moving, however, were the tenuous relationships between the adult characters and their mothers. The story is a page-turner, but the deeper insights about family will keep you thinking about this book for a long while. About tonight's speakers. R.J. Hoffmann was born and raised in St. Louis and received an MFA in fiction from Columbia College, Chicago. Hoffmann's writing has appeared in Barely South Review, The Sun, Harper Palette, the Roanoke Review, Booth, and Lunch Ticket. He was the winner of the Madison Review's 2018 Chris O'Malley Prize for Fiction and a finalist for the Missouri Review's 2019 Jeffrey E. Smith Editor's Prize. He lives in Elmhurst, Illinois, with his wife and 2 children. Robin Kall blended her passion for a good book and natural curiosity to create the Reading with Robin show, where she spoke with authors, readers, and literacy-adjacent professionals on a weekly basis. What first began back in 2002 as an AM radio program on Saturday mornings has since blossomed into a bookish and philanthropic empire. The show was the first of its kind, giving readers unprecedented access to the authors they love, and Robin continues to cultivate this community through online events and interviews. In 2016, with the assistance of her cohort and daughter Emily, Robin added to her literary tale as they launched the award-winning monthly author series, The Cardigan Connection. Robin lives in Rhode Island with her family, and I would like to say is one of the original book influencers. So I am happy to have both RJ Hoffmann and Robin Kall. I would like to welcome them both for Left Bank Books. So if you will please at home help me welcome them to the stream. Hello. Big round of applause.
Hi. I know you can hear it. Shane, that was awesome. That was like the most exciting. I was just like, what's he going to say next?
It's always a mystery.
Wonderful to be in St. Louis.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
So good to have both of you here. Robin, I've been a fan of yours for a while, actually. You have really been a great influencer, helping bring books like RJ's to people's attention. It's really fantastic to have you here. And RJ, so happy to have you back in St. Louis. I don't know how long you've been gone, but we are really happy to have you here to celebrate your book's birthday, which is happy early book birthday, because your book is not even out until tomorrow.
That's right. I'm celebrating already, and I usually drink light because I've been in Chicago for a long time, but
cheers.
For time's sake, I cracked open a Budweiser. So
cheers. Here's to you.
All right.
Very excited. This is great. Well, I look forward to coming to your bookstore, Shane, when we can move about the world again, for a real in-person hug and to just see, I mean, just when you talk about the bookstore, you can I can just feel it and smell it. Like I've been in a bookstore and, like we all haven't been. So thank you for just giving me something else to look forward to.
I'm going to go away and let you two have the conversation.
Bye, Shane. Thank you. Well, this is so fun, huh, RJ? Here we are.
Here we are.
I am, first of all, thrilled. I mean, for Left Bank Book enabling me to take the stage, and to Simon Schuster for inviting me to get to have this first conversation with you, because there's just nothing like a debut novel. And like I was telling you, my finished copy just arrived. And as Shane was saying, buy books. It's really what helps to keep the bookstores going, especially at this time. And there is nothing like an autographed book for a gift. And I've been suggesting that people buy them for their teachers and for anybody, who you think needs a little extra gift, smile, hug, a virtual, or otherwise. What's better than a signed book? And a debut. So, I was going to ask you, RJ, to tell us a little bit about the book to open, but Shane did an awesome job at that.
Shane took care of that.
Yeah, if you'd like to add anything, and everybody, no worries, no spoilers. The book's out tomorrow. I promise. There's a lot about without ruining anything. And I've read it, so I'm going to be very careful not to say anything, except for that. Just as I was promised when the galley came, it was unputdownable, and there were so many thoughts and emotions going through my mind as I was reading it. But if there's anything you'd like to add to what Shane said about what the book is about and what it means to you, RJ.
Sure. I think Shane did a great job. For me, the book is, in addition to about adoption, it's about expectations. We all enter adulthood with expectations about what our lives are going to be like, and what our families' lives are going to be like, and then when those expectations don't always end up like you had planned, then everyone reacts, and I think that's what I was going through as I wrote the book, and I think that I hope some of that comes through is the how do you adjust when things don't go to plan or to expectations. So
that is the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do we adjust when things do not go to plan? And, what's really exciting for me too, and as we talked about, RJ and I had a little chit chat, so we got to have a little bit of a conversation, that this is your first book, and being a reader and always having the stream to write and doing this and making this leap. I mean, talk about the publishing story, because it really is not the usual trajectory, and start to finish. So will you share that, because everyone always loves to hear a publishing story.
Sure. Yeah. So as you said, I've always loved reading, and I blame that on my parents. When our TV broke when I was 7, they refused to get a new one until my brother, myself, and my sister all ended up on the honor roll at the same time. So I guess I can thank my brother and sister for helping me make sure that didn't happen for a while. And so I fell in love with books during that time. And then but I was a teacher's son, right? And you don't go get your MFA right out of college, because that's not a job, right? And so I spent a lot of time in IT, in IT consulting, and took a couple breaks, small breaks to write. And then when I was 47, I decided to quit and go get my MFA. And I kind of had written enough to know what I didn't know, and know that I needed the guidance of people who had been there and done it. And so I quit my job, went full time at Columbia College Chicago, and the rest of the time I wrote. And I was lucky enough maybe put myself in front of the luck, but spent a lot of time querying agents, and Harvey Klinger was good enough to tell me what he didn't like about my book, and asked me to fix it, and I did. And a week after that took a few months, and then a week after he signed me, he called me to tell me that Simon & Schuster wanted to buy it, which was amazing. That was like
every day, RJ. That's exactly
that's how it happened.
Who want to know how it goes. What did Harvey tell you to change about the book, unless that will give away something?
So he paged the social worker. He asked to make more of a character out of her. She just kind of wandered around before, and there was a whole nother subplot that I loved, and he just made me tear it out and throw it away. And but it made it a better book. And I think those were some of the bigger ones. We worked on the ending a lot to make it land a little bit more gracefully than I did in the beginning.
And the ending, which we won't give away, because the book, Other People's Children, which is available right here, is not tomorrow. So we would never do that. And she is beautiful, isn't she? So
you can get the ending by tomorrow evening if you follow.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like I was saying, the letter from your editor in the beginning, just talking about not being able to put it down. I love when I read those letters, because I'm like, okay, let's just see. And she was right. It was like that, and it's such a treat of a story. And I can imagine the heavy responsibility, really, to get the ending right and to get the characters. You've got a great cast of characters, and who are we rooting for, when, and why? And like, how much of our own biases come into reading a story, and what we think about, well, what would I do, and who's likable, and all of that. So will you talk about our characters? There are 3 points of view. Well, then there's some extra points of view too.
Yeah, there are a few more, but
right. There's a few.
It started as a short story, and it was very much from the point of view of the adoptive couple, and then, but you can't get, and they were grieving the loss of a child through reclamation, and you can't get 350 pages out of that. So as I started writing, I wrote a scene from Carly's point of view, and she's the struggling teenage mother that places her child for adoption, and that scene, that's where I kind of fell for Carly, right? She's in a community college classroom when her water breaks, right? And they're reviewing Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and she's kind of comparing each of those levels to her own life. And after I wrote that chapter, I said, well, I got to find out more about her. And the story shifts. Gail and John, of course, have their relationship with its strengths and its tensions, and but the story shifted a little bit for me and became a Gail and Carly's story, and it really became a question of it became a question of how to be fair to both of those characters and all of those characters, and how to help everybody, help the reader see that each character has their strengths, and that makes some good decisions and makes some questionable decisions, and really made an effort to make sure there were no villains. And,
yeah, you did a really good job at that, because at different points in the story, like who was I rooting for? Was I rooting for Carly? And then we also have her mother, Marla. Marla. What was it like writing this? This is quite a character. Dialogue and circumstances and her backstory. Really, everybody has a backstory. There's sympathy to go around, yet some characters it's a little harder to listen to their voice. As a reader, that's a strong reaction.
Right.
Call their mother. They call her Marla. Paige and her sister call her Marla, but she hasn't had it so easy either.
Right, and I think that I held that her backstory is kind of as long as I could. Marla is not a sympathetic character.
Okay, good. Yeah, I didn't see
that. And she, but she, you eventually find out that she is acting badly from mostly pure motivations, right? And even if she's acting badly, you give her cut her some slack when you realize what she's been through and why she's doing what she's doing. And I think that's the sharing some compassion with each of the characters is what I spent a lot of time trying to do, to hopefully imbue their point of view with the empathy that would allow the readers to connect with each.
Absolutely, because there was that's what keeps you turning the pages, because it's what are they going to do now? How is what just happened going to set off the next chain? And really, I mean, as a reader, I'm always interested in how the story sort of started out for you. Like, did you know? Well, I guess not, because you talked about with Harvey, but like how it was going to end up, or did you sort of change your mind a little bit of how you were going to play it out to the end, again, without giving anything away?
Yeah. So I didn't. I didn't know there's some pretty dramatic events in the middle that I didn't know about until I got there. And that, those events change everything. And, one of my professors at Columbia gave me, Joe Mino, he gave me some really good advice. He said to try and make it so that the readers, like you said, are rooting. They don't know who to root for. They don't know. Right. They haven't made a choice until that last moment about who they want the baby to end up with. And that was great advice from just a story perspective. But I think it forced me to invest each of those characters with actions and attributes that the reader can connect with, right? In order for them to be rooting for everyone. Everyone has to act poorly, and everyone has to act with virtue. So.
Well, job well done. And I, thinking also about the women in the story, and you are obviously, a guy.
I am.
Yeah, I mean, spoiler alert. How do you, put yourself in that point of view, write so well? I mean, if I didn't know, I wouldn't have said, oh yeah, Guy wrote that. Like, I would never have known, like a la Wally Lamb and She's Come Undone. Like, I would definitely not have known.
I appreciate that. That was definitely something that I put a lot of effort into, and I think, part of that comes with reading a couple thousand novels by the time I'm 52, right? That literature is a way of allowing you into other people's subjectivity, people that you aren't like or that you haven't had their experience, and I think that helped. And just trying to apply a lot of empathy. I think the things that there are some things that are in this book that, from women's point of views, that are very women centric, that I have never gone through. That
Right.
I had to be. I was very, very careful with, for reasons that are obvious as you read it. And I tried not to. I tried to use metaphor a lot around those issues, and ask myself how I would feel, in not what it was like, but how I would feel about what was happening in those circumstances, right. And then use metaphors rather than description in those circumstances.
Yeah,
it's a way of respecting women.
Yeah. I felt very respected, RJ, and that came through. Do you have sensitivity readers?
So I have a wife.
Oh, yeah. I didn't want to say, did your wife read the book?
She read it more than anybody, and a number of women read it. And I got some good feedback on. I didn't get a ton of you got the woman thing wrong.
No, it felt very genuine. I mean, all of them. You had a lot of women in there. Yeah,
and one of the things that I did get wrong a number of times, even into the arc that you may have read, I never had infants, right? My daughter was one when she came home. My children are adopted, and my son was moving close to 2, and so there were those. How do you hold a baby, and what kind of stroller can they be in, and all these other things that I never had experience with. And, there's a sex scene in there, right? And there was one line that had to change, and my whole workshop just laughed at me when they were providing feedback to it, and it was the line was something like, they both finished it at once or something like that. And, when Laura, one of the women in my workshop, was just like, okay, before we start, number one, that never happens.
Right. Wow. I mean, his
fiction,
sensitivity, RJ, maybe it happened somewhere. I don't know. That's funny. What was that? I mean, workshopping, which is another, it could be a whole other conversation, because it's fascinating, really, having your work read. How large was the class?
We were a cohort of 12. We overlapped with a couple other cohorts. Yeah.
So you're really, really digging into each other's work and really being vulnerable and getting some great advice, taking some of it, really thinking about it. So has anybody else in that group published or are publishing, or are they here tonight?
I hope so. I'll check the comments. Let me know if you're here. They're certainly writing. I meet with a number of them, every other Wednesday to write over Zoom, or read over Zoom and give feedback. And so there's a ton of people that are writing. There are a number of them that have been published in literary journals. They haven't told me about the book yet, if that's landed yet, but I'm certain that it will, given the talent that was in the room.
That's exciting, because that group just becomes, that is such an amazing, the relationships, again, the trust, and things that happen in that kind of group, from what I know from writing workshops and people who have spent that kind of time together and shown their work in various forms. So that was constructive feedback from Laura or whomever.
It was, and they some of them, a few of them read the full novel, but they all heard so much of that work, because I started it at the beginning of my second semester, 4 or 5, and so they were relentlessly bombarded with Gail and John and Carly, and were relentlessly useful with their feedback. So
Yeah, and I love what you said about Paige, who's a social worker, and how her story, because I didn't know that her story became, more than it was originally, and I can see where that was really helpful in the storyline and understanding, because she's charged with, really on both sides, working
Yeah.
with Charlie, working with John and Gail, and I think at one point or several points, Paige's mother, Marla, said, well, she's working for them. But
Yeah.
talk about your children who are adopted. So was that an experience to have who is my advocate here? Was that something that came from experience?
That didn't. Our adoptions were international.
Oh, right.
And so it was a very, very different experience than John and Gail or Carly, for that matter, went through. So I think the things that I took from the adoption experience that informed the book, though, are first that waiting and that anxiety and that uncertainty that any adopted parent has gone through, regardless of how drama free the process ends up being. And the second thing is that, and I think it kind of becomes central to the story, is the way you the way that you fall in love immediately with your adoptive child. The child is placed into your hands and into your arms, and that's your child, and there's nothing gradual about it. And so when that was threatened for John and Gail, I was very tuned to that experience there, that connection that can happen so quickly.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was the emotion as a reader of really being tuned into John and Gail and all of their hopes and dreams and what their life would be like, and the planning. And it's up to the moment of knowing where they talk about the book that they send out for prospective mothers to read through, and how you want to present yourself and what are they thinking. And that this is just, everything is riding on this. So there's so much tension, and then what can happen. So that was something that was really, again, the page turning. Will you talk about, one of the things I was really curious about was, especially in a first novel, characteristics, traits that you might give to a character. Like Gail is a list maker.
Mm-hmm.
Such a list maker that seemed like it had to come from somewhere personal. I don't know, but I'm a list maker. So I'm going to let you answer that. I don't know if anyone with a computer.
Let me see who's logged in here.
You can see I'm looking nervous because I don't know why my computer is doing something weird. You answer that question, and I'm sorry, this is a little unprofessional, but better than just going dark. So
okay, we'll see you soon.
No, I'll be right there. I'm not going dark.
So I think that all of the characters ended up not being a single character or a single person from my life. You take characteristics from everyone, right? And before I handed the book to my wife for the first time, I said, okay. And by the way, this was when John was cheating on Gail in an early version. And I said, okay, just to be clear, I'm not John. You're not Gail, right? And I'll answer that question this way, though. It's a push towards particularity, I think. And Gail was an accountant in the first draft, and I was like, that's not going to stand, right? That's horrible. It's boring.
No offense to the accountants out there, though.
Right. But my brother's an accountant. But I needed something a lot more particular for her, and I needed something that showed the grit and strength of who I wanted her to be. And I tended to, I tended to filter a lot of her experiences through her work. So she, for those of you who haven't read it, her family sharpens knives.
I know, that's such a cool thing that you get. I mean, how did you?
I love that knives.
Accountant knives. That was an interesting, business and career. Yeah.
So you didn't see that in the arc, but in the there's an acknowledgement for Bart Mastronzi in the completed book. I had met him at a party, and back when parties were a thing. Remember that? And
No, what is it you speak of? Okay. No.
and he told me about. I said, "Well, what do you do?" And he said, "Well, I grind knives." I'm like, "Well, tell me about that." And he told me about his company, his family company, back generations, sharpens knives for restaurants and grocery stores. And then he told me this. So that was interesting enough, right? I was like,
Yeah.
I've never heard that. And then he told me the story of his father, who decided to go after the restaurants in Chicago, which are all Greek owned. And so he taught himself Greek at night school, and made up a backstory about his mother that was Greek, and he told me the story of that, and it connected with me as a way of connecting Gail to her father, to her heritage, to this one town in Italy where all these Italians had this diaspora had come from, of knife grinders to all corners of the world, right? And
So if you order your book tonight, it will come complete with a set now. Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be cool. That would be cool.
Next book, but isn't it really cool? Like you say, party, conversation, and all of that. But where you're listening to somebody at a party and they're telling you something, and your writer's wheels are spinning.
Yeah.
Right? You like?
Some of my friends might be on here tonight, so they're not going to say things in front of me anymore.
Well, that is what can happen, right? I mean, when your friends are a writer, I mean, I've been in that situation where an author said, "Can I use that?" And I'm like, "Sure." You say something, you don't really realize it, but when you're always sort of thinking, and are you a good eavesdropper for conversation? Is that something you like to? I know your friends are watching.
Let's leave that alone. Well, one thing that was kind of interesting about with characters, Gail and John. I wrote a big chunk of I wrote the first half of the book, and my thesis advisor was reading it, and he said, Gail's kind of weak. And so I went back and redid all the scenes from Gail's point of view, and gave it to somebody else, and that person said, Gail's awesome, but John is kind of weak. And then so I went back and each time I wouldn't touch the other person's chapter, the other character's chapters, but I would strengthen each character in turn, and that would it would wash out the other character that was previously strong. And so it was like this competition almost between these two characters until they both landed at a place where they were equally strong, and they kind of challenged each other to be better. I guess that's maybe a good metaphor for marriage if you boil it down.
Make each other. You just make the other one sharper.
Yeah.
Or, you
just use a knife metaphor.
My own particular marriage, like you do. It's not like necessarily a competition, but there is a sense of bringing the other person up, and while you are, making yourself as you're the best version of yourself. Right. But but also when you were talking about, I don't know why this popped into my head. You're making this one a little sharper, and you're bringing this one up. And I was just picturing sort of like, is it just me? Wait, where did RJ go? Oh,
I don't know where RJ went. So hopefully he'll come right back.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Shane. So what do you think about this? I was use my metaphor as RJ was talking about, a little of this and a little of that, like when you're evening off a cake and you're just making the side a little bit straight, and then there's no cake left, is what I was going for.
Yeah.
And thinking about how RJ would, what you do to enhance. He is.
Did I mention I used to be in IT? Yeah, I can't explain what just happened.
You know what? We always call it like the bewitched syndrome. Like I was Pandora. I would pop in and out. I mean, I've done events where that's happened, and then like voila,
No, I clicked on something. It was completely my fault. There was nothing that
Don't
Shane did.
you admit that.
There was no witchcraft involved. It was
Oh,
purely
RJ, that's big of you. I would never have. I would never what happened. My dog walked by, Shane and I were discussing how it is that you enhance a character. Like when you're going back in to look at Gail or to John, what is it about, how you've built their character where you, like, how do you give them that extra? Or, is it a scene where you're like, want to show, how they're stronger, or as opposed to telling, but like, without people having read it, I guess it would be hard to get an example, but is there any way to answer that question coherently?
Sure. I maybe not coherently, but I'm still in my first Budweiser, so I'll give it a shot. I think that making them particular, making them act is giving their interiority, when you're in their point of view and you have access to their subjectivity, you get so much of what they think about themselves. But you get such a more interesting and nuanced view of things when you force them to speak and force them to act and force them to be in conflict with others or in tension with others. And I think one of my favorite things to do with a character is have there be a disconnect between those two things, between what's going on inside their brain and what's coming out of their mouth and what they're choosing to do. And even as they experience that disconnect for themselves, you really learn about people or learn about a character from that kind of exchange, right? Where they don't expect what's going to happen when it happens.
Well, that's the cool thing about as a reader, because we have the benefit of knowing certain things that they don't know we know yet.
Right.
But we do. Yeah. And therein lies the joy of reading a novel and not being able to put it down. So yeah, I think that's really interesting until you get to this final product.
That's a book.
Children. Because I did read The Galley. So, and it's funny, I am never, like, whenever an author will say, well, this was, like, to me, The Galley is pretty tight, depending on when you receive it. It's, it's, but then I'm like, well, what else is in here? I don't want to miss anything, but it's just, as I would say, it's a treat of a novel, and it is absolutely, it's been hard discussing this without discussing it. Like
it's a book that depends on suspense.
Well, there you go. But it's it's a really good book club pick, because you're going to want to talk about it. People are going to want to, and people will have so much to say about the situations. So much is relatable, obviously, and it made me think a lot about things that probably I didn't think about when my children were young. I don't remember, because it's been so long. Is it time for questions, Shane?
Yeah, we have a lot of questions coming in from the audience.
So I don't want to overstay my chit-chatting, because this is so much fun, and it's so nice to see people, like in my own home, sort of.
I will say that we have a lot of people here watching tonight. So if you want to type out questions, we have a lot of comments and a lot of really great questions already, but keep them coming so we can answer anything.
Keep them coming. I just am imagining what it used to be like to see, to have an audience full of people. And yeah, Shane, you're doing a good job being like all of them. And also the thing about book people is, and one of my favorite parts about doing a live event is when I would ask RJ, like, RJ, what are you reading, or what are you looking forward to? And everyone is furiously scribbling. Or even better, because in the bookstore you get up and you go to the shelves with your friend. Yeah. You're like, oh my God, you didn't read that. And it's just that bookish energy, and like people get it. Those are the people who get that, and then they like leave with, the book they came to see, and then like plus a lot of other.
Shane can't wait for those days to return. I can tell.
Oh, I know.
Like, I just want to put books in people's hands again. Like,
no,
it's such a thing that, like, it's part of my soul. Like,
Yes. I mean, and the independent bookstore picks, I mean, so you guys must have them at the bookstore, right? With the little tags and Shane recommend. I mean, that's the best. I've been out and about when we would travel and we go to bookstores and I would see a recommendation from a bookseller. I would take a snapshot, and if it was an author who was a friend, I would send it to them like, oh my God, I was in London once and somebody had written about Stephen Chbosky's, Perks. And I'm like, Stephen, look at, I love your book here. And he's like, yeah, no. But that's so much fun. I take it very personally. I reshelve a bookstore. You can tell I'm like itching to get out to a bookstore. So what was the question?
I was telling the audience to ask questions, but let's start with some comments. So first off, Paul, who I'm guessing maybe related to you, says Grandma McCain read it in 2 days. So if that's not,
I think it's too late to put that on the back of the book.
Paperback. You can just
better
Cara Wall and put Grandma on there.
What better what better quote could you put on there besides Grandma McCain read in 2 days?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that.
Several of I have frequently had a staff pick that's like, I loved it and my mom loved it, and she's hard to please. Like,
that's awesome.
So lots of great comments. So many people saying that they're really excited to read the book. So Stacy, Anissa, Tammy is asking, who is your favorite character? And this is the hardest question I think you will probably get all evening.
Carly's my favorite character. Carly, Carly just kind of emerged. I had to work at John and Gail. And, it's John and Gail and Carly, right? Those are the big characters. And Maya's pretty easy because she didn't say anything. And but Carly kind of came, she just came out of the pen right onto the page. And I think to a certain degree, she's an 18-year-old girl, right? And so she's an 18-year-old young woman, and you kind of see her grow through this novel, and she's the one that you can see change the most and change at that point in her life in a really interesting way. So I think that Carly, everybody, when my friends have read the book and they text me halfway through, and it's always Marla in the text, but Carly's my favorite.
Shelley questioned, not Marla?
Oh my God, not Marla.
And Nissa's question is, what is the most interesting thing that you learned about yourself during the writing of your debut novel?
Oh, yeah, I should have been reading the comments ahead for that one. What did I learn about myself? I think I guess that I can write a novel. It sounds really, obvious and, a strange thing to say, but, I quit my job and went back to school and told all my suburban dad friends that I was going to get an MFA, and they all kind of looked at me and then went back to what they were doing. Right. And so, there's I don't want to say personal risk, but like there's a lot invested in that. Right. And learning that I kind of went into it with the bet that, I knew I wasn't, just a gifted writer, but I kind of went into it with the idea that if you work at it long enough, and if you keep on shaping the words long enough, that you can make a novel out of it. And that ended up being true. So that was really exciting. I think the thing I was processing throughout this novel, my daughter, a lot of people that are on my daughter went through a really hard time through the time that I was going to school and writing this novel, and the things I said about expectations earlier relate a lot to that. And I would say I don't know that I guess I digested a lot of that through the writing of the novel. I digested the experiences that my daughter went through, my whole family went through as we adjusted to new normals. So I guess those are my answers for that.
Yeah. And you said you said it started as a short story and
Mhm.
became a novel. And there are like writing short stories is not easy, first off. But writing a novel, like they both take a lot of commitment, and a novel takes years of commitment. So yeah, it is something that you can't be timid about. Like you need to go in. And I'm wondering, my personal question is, at what point did you realize this is more than a short story? This is more than I could ever possibly tell in this amount of words.
I guess I, I won't really answer that question. Because I found that I was very happy with the short story, and the short story form is a completely different form than the novel, and it was a complete short story, and it fit it in those 15 pages. That moment moment fit, and a novel is a completely different animal. And when I told Harvey, my agent, that I was thinking about turning another short story into a novel, it's like, that's a horrible idea. Don't do that. That never works. and I understand why he says that, because you had to drop your expectations around that story that the novel was, or that the short story was, and open up the world and let so much more in that you didn't have in mind. That when you wrote that short story, for instance, Carly was just the villain, right? She was the girl who was taking the baby back from John and Gail in the short story, and Carly became a full-fledged character, woman, protagonist in the novel, and it's a completely different thing. And it's an apple and an orange.
Marilyn's asking, how long did it take you to write it?
I started in the December of 2017, and finished a draft in about a year. Spent another year rewriting it, and then then Simon and Schuster bought it. Mary Sue Rucci, my editor, she helped me make it into what it is now. Right, she had some big impacts on it as well. But that took a few more months. So a little bit over 2 years, I guess, is the best answer for that.
Trish says, when shifting from the business world to the world of writing, was it hard to adjust to be more open and vulnerable, such as in your workshops?
Huh.
Good one.
So I don't know if anybody from my former company is on, but I was pretty open in consulting. I was in IT consulting, and I was the guy that was trying to keep all of the programmers from quitting, because programmers can all get a job at the next place the next day. And so to a certain degree, people think of consulting as this hard-edged place, but in a real way, it built empathy, because I had to spend, I enjoyed spending that time, but I devoted an enormous amount of my time making sure that people were, realizing what their goals were, and moving towards, making those goals real. And I had to share my journey through that in order to help them through that. So, the thing that I think the thing that I would say is that in a lot of ways, there's similarities between my work life and my writing life. Not that writing isn't work, but I keep telling my wife it is. Not sure entirely, but but it's get up every day. You got to get up every day, and the first kid that gets up, that's when I get up and I drink some tea and start writing, and get 4 or 5 hours in every day. I know that seems like a small amount. Don't make any comments about that. But and then I have to read a bunch after that. But it happens every day, and that's how in the business world the success I found there wasn't home runs, right? It was base hits and some strikeouts and base hit, and that's what it takes to write a novel too.
Well, as you said too, a lot of work. I mean, like working it and getting better, and that's something that you learned. I'm fascinated though, when you told your friends, were you already pretty committed? Because a lot of authors I've spoken to are like, well, I wrote in secret.
I totally wrote in secret. I didn't tell anybody. So I didn't talk about work a lot, but like I had a lot of friends that didn't know until I sold the book that it was kind of hard. I didn't want to be that guy, right? Whatever that means. But my rule was if somebody asks me how work is, then I'm not going to lie. I'm going to say I quit to go back to school to learn how to write a novel, and so that kind of leaked out over time, and there were a few people that said, I always wanted to write a novel. Here's my idea, and we talked about that, and then there was a lot of people that says, well, that sounds great, and then there were the majority looked at me like,
you're doing well. I was wondering, like, how many you may have inspired, and I'm not.
It's a book about business, right? No. It's an MBA you're going back for? No, it's an MFA. What's that?
But like, that's so cool, really, RJ. I mean, I just think like no regrets, and it's not easy to do that. And I don't know the particulars of all that, but I'm imagining what people, it makes people sort of think like, well, what did I always want to do? And what do I not want to miss out on? But like the writing thing is something that I can imagine you heard people think, because I just know that that's a thing people will say, like, I always wanted to. Or then, of course, is like, here's my idea. I'm never going to write this. RJ, but here's one for you.
I play men's league hockey, and there's been a few discussions in the lot about the men's league hockey team story that needs to be developed. But,
absolutely.
That's on the back burner for now.
Thank you for your ideas. You can have like walk around with one of those. But I just can imagine. And also once you put it out there and say, this is what I'm doing. Yeah. That's what you're doing. Did you have more questions, Shane? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I slept tonight.
So I know very little about hockey, but have you read Beartown?
Oh, I love Beartown.
I never thought I would read a book about hockey, and loved that book.
That's you don't have to love hockey to love that book, but if you love hockey, you have to read that book. That's just fantastic. He's one of my favorite authors. And every 4 or 5 books, it's a Frederick Bachman book, but you can't do them all in a row because they're all kind of Frederick Bachman. But I did read that and I loved it. I actually I inserted. There's a scene where John goes to play hockey, and he plays for the Dumpsters, and which is the name of my hockey team. And somehow I snuck that past Mary Sue, because there's absolutely no reason that he needs to go play hockey. It is not essential to the novel at all. And it was only to trick the guys on my beer league hockey team into reading a novel this year. Oh, right. Right. It's like this little literacy project that I'm doing for middle-aged hockey players.
That's so funny. I have a dear friend who plays still. Yeah. And they're like 50. I think they're 60 now. But yeah, that's so funny. Because that is a good way of seeing if they read it, actually. Nobody mentions the Dumpsters. They're in trouble.
Right.
They better watch out on that ice, right? You could get T-shirts like, with the book jacket, Dumpsters on the back.
Right. Those two worlds, they're parallel. They don't really, we don't cross this.
Well, they could if you have a Dumpsters book club. And then, it all comes full circle.
So let's do 2 more questions. 27. Billiken Racer says 27 Shock says hello, RJ. First, I thought I would throw that in there because I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
Oh, I thought you would. I thought it had something to do with hockey. Okay, so Tammy has a question. So Tammy's asking thoughts on a follow-up novel exploring characters deeper. And I'm very curious about this because I generally don't see a lot of follow-up novels, but I recently read Viet Nguyen's book,
Mm-hmm.
and which is the follow-up to The Sympathizer and
Right.
The Committed.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow.
That
Okay,
worked.
even when I thought a book was completely done, like you can, like in literary fiction, continue that world in very new and interesting ways.
I've thought a little bit about it. I'm writing another book right now, so or what I hope will be a book. And you kind of there are people that just write the 4 books in the series, right? There's no way in hell I could do that. I need a break from these people for a while. I've spent 2 years with them, 2.5 years, and I love them, but we need some distance. We need some time apart. And but I think there's a couple different ways to go there, and I would love to know what happens to Carly next, and to John and Gail. I kind of want to know a little bit more about what happened to Marla back in the day.
You could do a prequel.
That's the one that I think interests me the most. But I think it's a book or 2 off. If they'll let me publish another book, that is.
Yeah, I'd love to know more about John's mother or John growing up. Some of that was really fascinating, and how he grew up with his aunt and uncle. You guys are going to have to read it to find out. Other people's children. I mean, the title also works on so many levels. It's fabulous read. It's very clever, and it's thought-provoking and charming and heartwarming all together. It's really good.
All right, so last question, and this might be, have you ever saved a young boy's life in a lake?
I have. I saw that question, and I saved my friend Jeff Gruner's son. He fell into the lake, and I just grabbed him by his arm. He was young enough that I just grabbed him by his arm and pulled him out, saved his life. And, I don't know why John Smith is the one that asked that question, but yeah.
Do you know who this John Smith is?
I think I do now. I think that's probably Jeff Gruner. So
Okay.
I have saved a child's life. But that's about.
I can't top that. Yeah. I mean, what can you say after that? Wow.
All right. Well, I want to thank you both so much. Reminder that the book is available for sale, signed copies. RJ was so kind to send us signed book plates, so no personalized copies available, but signed copies available. Book birthday is tomorrow. Cannot wait for readers, reading groups, everyone to get this book in their hands and devour it and love it as much as the entire book industry is loving your book.
I'm very excited. Hey, I will not sleep well, and I will get up early tomorrow and be outside of Anderson Books. They're the left bank of where I live. So very, very thankful for you hosting the Shane, and for you, Robin, to spend the time on this. I'm just excited to have a book. I keep wandering around my house mumbling, I have a book, and my wife and daughter are sick of it. So I gotta get on.
Text the dumpsters; they'll be happy to hear it.
Actually, the number 27, I know who that is. That is Rich Wilbur. So dumpsters. That is a dumpsters reference.
You've got a lot of support.
Figured it out.
See, it all comes together.
It does.
Thank
Very
you.
excited, and I hope that those of you who buy the book enjoy it, and thank you for spending the time with us tonight.
Absolutely. And Robin, thank you so much for doing this. It really is such a pleasure to finally get to meet you after knowing who you are for so long.
You made my day, but really I was so thrilled when I was asked to do this, and I appreciate that I was entrusted with such a special book, and chatting with RJ and getting to meet you, Shane, and just like love the whole thing. This was really great, and thank you to everybody for watching, and happy reading to you all. And you sleep well, RJ.
All right, thank you.
We got a big day tomorrow.
Big
Sounds
day.
good. Take care.
All right. Have a great night, audience, and we'll see you soon.